Now, I've never been in the SCA or gone to an SCA event, but if I remember correctly, the SCA has been around for what, over 50 years?
Yeah, I think they're pushing. Yeah, I want to say 50 years for sure.
So, having that much of a foundation in place, I think goes a long way towards, you just come across ways to, keep costs down because you have stuff left over from the previous years. Whereas with HEMA, a lot of the times, especially with newer events, you're dropping event runners are having to drop capital on venues. They're having to drop, and that's like another thing. Like with a lot of SCA events, a lot of it's, if I'm wrong, correct me. If you're doing an event, usually it's just like you just need a big field, pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. You just you just need a big costs are definitely substantially lower, and that's why they can afford to only charge like $5-10. They're just really trying to cover their costs, and their cost is already pretty low. Um, I definitely like encourage HEMA folks to do cross training. I know I'm like uh, the mods, the HEMA Alliance mods hate me for this because I'm always trying to promote like different things. But I mean,
Here comes the controversy, folks.
I know, right? But honestly, like I do because you're fencing more competitors, right? So it's gonna only make you better. I mean, HEMA, sure, great. You do have a lot of competitors if you can travel and if you have the money for it, great. But if you don't, like, you can do both. Like, get into uh, other arts that are a little bit cheaper, and as long as you're competing, you're throwing out like you're swinging a sword, you're gonna get better. And the beauty about SCA is why I got into it. I'm not trying to promote it at all, but kind of, but not really. But but mainly is because, man, like once a year there's a tournament called Penzik, and there's about like 14,000 people there, and there's at least a pool of 1,000 to 3,000 fencers. So that's how many people you get to fight in a whole week, right? So
Now, where is Penzik? Where does that occur
actually, I think that's in your hometown, Pennsylvania, man.
at?
Yeah.
What?
Dude, you need to get there. It happens once a year. I forget where in Pennsylvania, but they have this
Probably out. It's
huge.
probably out west or like up north. Probably where
Yeah.
like there's actual land to do that. A lot of area around here is pretty well developed.
Oh, for sure. Like, let's just say the army, literally for training, they fly their planes or helicopters over it, and then uh, for refugee camp training, essentially they're guessing how many people are in the camp as they're training, and then they'll ask Pensick for the actual numbers to see how close their guests are.
Get
And
out! That is really really cool.
yeah, and it's literally like 14,000 people living the like trying to live the medieval life. You're intense. You're trying not to use technology, and so you get the full medieval Renaissance experience.
God, that place must stink after like a couple days.
Oh, for sure, man. Like I would literally pay for a hotel night just to shower. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I remember when I was stationed in Korea, and we were out in the field for 2 weeks, and pretty much like the train area that we were at didn't have running water, and Korea. I'm not sure if you know this about Korea. Korea in the summertime is miserable. It's either 100 degrees, 120 million% humidity, or it's pouring down rain, and like
Oh
there's
God,
there's no middle ground. um
no.
Everything is a like polarizing, doesn't even begin to describe it. And after like a couple days of just like training hard and everything, and like it didn't take long before you could barely breathe. Like you stopped breathing through your nose, and you had to be out there for like 2 weeks. And like it got to the point that they started like busing soldiers to and from a nearby Korean training facility just so folks could get showers. And Yeah, it was brutal, and like, oh god, we left so much trash. We got in so much trouble at the end of it. Like after 2 weeks of just leaving trash around because like the garbage dump points were all filled up, and no one at our battalion thought maybe we should clear out the garbage every couple days or so. No one thought about that, so there was just nothing but a mess there, and it was just disgusting.
Oh, that's brutal.
This
You know what?
experience
I kind
brought
of
to you
like
by the
your
greatest
Newfoundland
military
now.
of all time. So let me ask you: you've been having a lot. I mean, a lot of the success was based off of the kind of that cross discipline stuff, like the HEMA versus Kendo work. Moving forward with your channel, what are some of your ambitions that you have with the channel?
Well, some of the guys in the Maritime Source School chapter, which I'm pretty much a part of. I just joined the Maritime Source School just I think a year ago. There's about 3 other instructors that run this chain for the Maritimes, which is which honestly we have to, because in the Maritimes we're so spread out, and we're not populated enough to have big schools, that we need to work together. But essentially, one of my guys is, and along with myself too, I helped write some of the Raworth curriculum that he's teaching. But he's got a whole Raworth syllabus or curriculum out for people who want to learn, that don't have access to a HEMA club that could teach it. So it's just like a nice how-to series on that. I actually I'm secretly getting into, I guess it's not a secret anymore, but I've been working on Distreza Saber.
You
So
heard it first here, folks. He's working on Distreza.
Distreza Saber, which is I think there's only like 2 other people working on it in North America. So I want to release a series on that. Castile hooked me up with one of their econ Castile blades, saber blades, so that I can review. It's one of their new ones with the upgraded tang and everything. Thank you, Castile. And I'm gonna use
Castile, we
that.
love you so much.
Right? I'm gonna use that saber for my how to distress saber video, and as along with reviewing that as well. But I think that's gonna be one of my biggest programs or projects. And then I want to work on some more gear review, man. I'm trying to get a kids gear review like series together, because I think HEMA should definitely reach out to not only adults but to kids. Kids are the future, man, and we need to get kids started early. And believe it or not, if we get a kid starting HEMA at like 8, by the time they're 22, they're gonna be like Martin Fabian times 10, like, so I think getting kids in early, it's key. But and so that's why, and the problem with kids is the gear, man. There's not enough gear out there that is made for kids, safe for kids. So this is one of the biggest challenge of starting a kids program.
No, definitely, for sure. And I think that if there enough people push for it, you're going to see some manufacturers who will kind of be like, oh, this is the trend. Let's get ahead of the trend. Um, for sure. I think that makes a lot of sense, man. And I mean, one of the unique things, at least about HEMA around here, was when we were looking for a place to do our training at, and we eventually found our home with I feel so bad. If any of the folks from Elite Fitness and Martial Arts watch this, I'm so sorry. I don't know the exact type of karate you do. I am so sorry. All I know is they do Japanese stuff. And but yeah, like if you look at, like, I mean, the overwhelming demographic that they have is kids. And I think one of the things that made a lot of the local martial arts dojos, schools, academies, or whatever, one of the things, they looked at us, HEMA, with curiosity, but they didn't feel threatened by us because our target demographic wasn't their target demographic.
Yeah.
And it ended up working out really well, especially with the place that we currently train out of now. Like just a very symbiotic relationship that we're very grateful for. And yeah, like when we talk about like, just population density in the metropolitan area that I live in, there's got to be at least 20, maybe 25 martial arts schools. Mostly,
Wow.
yeah, like most of it's Taekwondo. You have a couple, I think there's like one or two Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu places, but the majority, like Taekwondo is pretty much king around here.
Dude, I can just imagine like once you get a couple of them in the school, they're gonna be doing all these crazy kicks with spinning swords at the same time.
Just like like Geralt did in The Witcher, right?
Right? Just like a couple spinny kicks. Jeez. No,
So,
I think getting into working with other martial art clubs has their own benefits. Like I'm working with the kennel club, and it's the same thing. Like we're not stealing people from each other. Instead, we have people who are doing crossing over. So some of his kennel students actually come over to my longsword class, and vice versa. So I think it's a healthy relationship as long as we're not stepping each other over each other's toes, and we have like a mutual respect for each other. So I think having that is nice too, and sharing the space is definitely key for people who, for places where spacing might be expensive. So working together like that might be a thing people have to do for sure.
yeah, definitely, absolutely, man. One of the things that has kind of been more of a focus as far as where I'm looking at my channel as the channel develops and whatnot is really, and it's really only been something that a few content creators geared like that have that HEMA focus on YouTube have done, is trying to take the presentation up a notch. Like, I mean, you look at Scala Gladiatoria, you look at the Academy of Historical Fencing, both channels I put up on my latest video about like top YouTube channels focused on HEMA. Like great content, amazing content, but a lot of it was standing right here, looking at the camera and just kind of like talking. And I'm really trying to, and the thing is, it's kind of a thing like it's been done. I want to see what we can do with it. And there's a couple folks that have really kind of gone beyond that. Like Anton Kahodovic is a great example. Also the I never get the pronunciation right. The Academy of the Polish guys who do Fiore, and they make the really cinematic stuff.
Or something like that.
The Academy like Smirmenzi or something like that. Yeah, like having folks on your team that videography is kind of like their livelihood. You create amazing looking content, and that's kind of like the direction I want to take. This is trying to create not only good content, but beautiful content. Like content that visually is something that pulls you in. And it's a lot of the reason why I kind of like set up with, kind of upgraded my setup. Like before, I literally just had like a little ring light stand with a little cell phone holder, and pretty much had like this really crappy ring light. And if you look at my second video, like the top longsword video, the visual presentation of it compared to my latest video, it's like night and day. And
Yeah, for sure. I was actually quite impressed with your top 10 video. I was like, oh damn, HEMA Poppy's doing it real well.
well, and the crazy thing is, and it really all stemmed from looking at content creators who focus on photography and videography, and like it's so crazy. There are YouTube channels out there that their sole focus is on showing you how to create a YouTube channel, and it's been like there's so many amazing resources out there. And one of like the big things for me was just lighting. Like if you take a look like right here, I'm gonna actually give everyone like kind of like a little tour. So if you look over here, and the crazy thing was, I didn't like buy these lights. These were lights that my wife had from years ago when she used to do photography, and they were literally sitting around in a storage shed for years, and I just stumbled across them. But I mean, having like these really beautiful soft boxes, having the two of them, and then she had like two other lights that I'm not even using right now. And not only that, but kind of upgrading my rig. Like the video I put up last week, I shot it on an LG Stylo 4. This phone is like 3 or 4 years old. It cost me like $120, and it's really just kind of goes to show how using something like lighting makes such a huge difference in the quality of your content. And kind of like moving forward, actually I have a new phone, and I decided to go with the mobile platform as opposed to getting like a DSLR or a mirrorless cam, just because of like the versatility. Like instead of having to carry this heavy kit of all this stuff, just having something focused around a device I use all the time. And it was actually really cool. The stuff came in today. I was so pumped. So what you see here, so pretty much, and the great thing about this, I can either have this as like kind of like in selfie mode, where I pretty much use the screen as my video monitor. That way I can like check my focus, make sure my exposure, my ISO, and my white balance is all good before getting really into it. And the really cool thing is having like a really neat little gimbal like this takes just pretty much has that really buttery smooth video, which you really like you can like with more like like the iPhone 11 Pro, the Samsung Galaxy S10, and the new S20, but you really can't do that with a lot of phones that came before that. And the really cool thing was this little gimbal setup. It solves the problem of having that smooth video, which means now whenever I'm training, whether I'm sparring or competing, I can now have the opportunity to make really cool, smooth video, and I'm really excited to show that off. But another like just really cool things, and there's this one guy, his name is Peter McKinnon. I think I dropped his name earlier. He was like pretty much showing like like he's a big DIY guy, even though he has enough money. Like dude's got like 5 million subscribers or some shit, but he's all about like the DIY stuff. And it was actually watching him. I have this Movo, a little mini shotgun mic, and it's really good quality, and it's only like $40. But the thing was, I didn't have an attachment to connect this microphone to this gimbal. And the solution I came up with, which is insane, is hair ties.
Yeah.
I literally just like did like a double loop of a hair tie, and now this sucker is not going anywhere if I can move the camera around. And pretty much the really cool thing is, if I'm filming and I have to switch from selfie from the front facing camera to the rear facing camera, I can flip it really quickly and really easily. And the really cool thing about this particular gimbal, this like little stabilizer, is that it can wirelessly charge your phone while you're using it, which means you can be filming all day.
Damn. Yeah, okay, so I should have done my research better because I only got the Osmo 3, and that was a recent purchase after I guess my first YouTube check. I was like, okay, so YouTube gave me some money and maybe I should go spend it. And
Well, hey man, the Osmo is still, it's one of like Osmo really kind of set the standard for phone gimbals.
yeah, for sure, for sure. I do love my Osmo 3, and it's got some really cool features. Like you can the software is really good. Like if I want to,
does it have the face tracker where it'll
yeah, it has a face tracker. So if I'm recording someone sparring, or if I'm recording myself sparring, I can set it on a tripod, make sure that it tracks me, so that me and my partner or whoever I'm facing will always be in focus.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which is nice to have. Another thing I would like to add to list of things, if you're starting off and stuff, is definitely getting a good phone helps. Using your phone, because laptop cameras, they're not as good anymore.
Yeah.
So
Like the only I'm not sure how good, like, because this camera right here is a laptop camera. Now, before I turned these lights on and I just had the interior light of this room, the video quality was terrible. Now, having a key light and a fill light over here kind of helped. At least on my screen, it looks better. I don't know how it looks on yours because internet.
no,
But
I can tell the difference between your laptop camera and your cell phone. Your actual cell phone camera, it has better resolution right now.
oh, does it?
Yeah, it does. But yeah, no, you're right. So laptop cameras, they're not as high tech as cell phone cameras nowadays. So if you have the money, you might as well upgrade your cell phone, and then you could use it as a camera. Another thing you could do if you can't afford soft boxes and all that kind of stuff. I'm gonna make myself look really yellow right now, but
I'll
I'm
do it.
like a small LED light
Oh
right
yeah.
now.
Oh yeah,
And
there are tons of them out there that you can get for like less than $40 that are amazing.
oh, for sure. I'm pretty sure like I paid like $10 or $20 for this one.
Yeah.
And it mounts onto your gimbal, and you can have like two of them on your gimbal if you wanted to, right? So
Yeah, I mean, even just going to your local hardware store and getting like those LED work lights, you can get those incredibly cheap. Because, granted, trust me, if I didn't have these already, I probably would not have owned them at this point in my YouTubing career. Because I'm pretty sure all of these lights that my wife had we probably spent like $300 or $400 on them when we first got them. So I mean, this is definitely like just a huge blessing to be able to do that. But so I mean, like lighting is huge, and it's really something that you can do on a very on a low budget. I mean, there are a whole bunch of options out there which are amazing, but I think probably one of the biggest things for me was audio.
yeah, yeah,
Because
audio stuff. Yeah, I mean, you can buy like thankfully with technology upgrades these days, you can get like a small, interview kind of mic and use it. Actually, Matt Easton uses one of these. So
yeah, I wore a lapel mic when I did the top YouTube channels. I wore a lapel mic and I just plugged it into my phone. I'm actually really excited to see how this. So everyone can see. This is the Movo VX-R10, and you can find it on Amazon for I think it's like $40. And it's a shotgun mic, and it comes with this little dead cat. So if you're outside and it's windy, it'll muffle the wind, and you won't have that little like distortion in your audio. But another really cool thing is that it comes with the proper cable. So if you want to plug it into your DSLR camera, you can. Or if you want to plug it into your cell phone, it comes with a separate cable for that as well. Now, the reason I'm not using my cell phone as my main cam is because whenever you plug the microphone in, as you discovered when you plugged it into your camera, you lose audio.
yeah,
So
that's the one thing I hate about it. But man, I need that dead cat or whatever. Dude, we have 100-kilometer winds here in Newfoundland. Apparently, that's normal, and I'm like, how is this normal?
You can get dead cats for so cheap, dude, on Amazon. Like they're ridiculously cheap. And like speaking of the whole audio thing, I found this on Amazon. It's a blue ball or whatever microphone. It's kind of like one of those that you should have like one of those like little S screens or whatever behind it, because it doesn't filter out the S's, the T's, the P's very well unless you kind of have it at like an angle, so the sound waves aren't directly hitting it, but they're kind of like going across it. And just having like a little thing like this that I could plug directly into my computer for, I mean, incredible audio compared to if I just used my laptop's base microphone. Like, this is shit nobody in HEMA talks about. I'm so glad we're having this conversation.
Yeah, just the gear, for sure.
And like, now I know that, like, and kind of like moving forward, in addition to trying to like work on creating more and more aesthetically pleasing YouTube content, a lot of work I'm planning on doing is with the Long Point League, and pretty much I'm going to be going to every single league event. I'm running 2 of the 4 league events. Where I'm running the New York event, and then I'm running the finals here in Harrisburg. But we're trying to get as much video, like more focus is being made on video this year than in any other season that the league has had. And I'm really excited to see where we go moving forward. Obviously, the first year of anything is not perfect. I mean, this is the first time we tried doing this interview system where we're talking like at an angle, like professionally, like, you know, how, you know, professional interviews go. And it took us a little bit to figure out, you know, some of the kinks and whatnot. So I'm ready. I know that there's going to be a lot of growing pains along the way, but in order to get really amazing stuff and really achieve something, you got to go through those growing pains.
You know what? I'm really glad you're doing that, because I think what was missing in HEMA to get it as popular as you know, to get it there as popular as it could be, or is the fact that a lot of the tournaments weren't, like, aside from Swordfish, and SoCal is doing a really good job filming their tournaments, and that's why they're getting so many views, right? So I think in order for clubs to promote their tournaments, you gotta have that video footage. You know, you should.
One of the things, I'm actually going to turn on the screen share. I want to show you something. This is from a European tournament called The Gathering.
Okay.
It was last year. And you remember whenever I did my video and I talked about a guy named Bjorn Ruther?
Yeah.
So
German longsword dude.
yeah, he's a Meyer guy.
Yeah.
Now I just got to figure out how to do. I'm trying to figure out how to put on screen share. This might take me a second. So I'm going to try to talk and not get too distracted. Recording. I knew how to do this like last time I was playing around with Zoom. I knew how to do this. I swear. Geez, this is gonna bug me now. But pretty much there was a way that I could share my screen, and pretty much let's go to advanced sharing options. Nope, that didn't help me. Maybe for another time. But there's a video of his tournament, and I would really recommend taking a look. I'm going to put this back at speaker view. There we go. There's a he was in the final, like the gold medal match at The Gathering, which is a German tournament. If I could gauge by the sound of the director of the fight going, "Lines! This guy's on first time." But pretty much it was all shot on a really solid camera. Like, you know, like it had to have been like 60 or 120 frames per second. Just really beautiful stuff. And it was really cool was like it was on a gimbal, so it was really like silky smooth as it like they went around the ring. And whenever a scoring action happened, they dropped the speed down, so you saw the scoring action in slow-mo.
Yeah, that's one thing I want to mention was the replays are key for the untrained eye. Like, for if you want to build an audience for HEMA, that's some of the things we got to do.
Yeah, definitely. And well, actually, a really cool thing. There's a guy who he lives down in the DC area who used to do HEMA, doesn't really do it so much anymore. But his main gig is he's a videographer. And we reached out to him And we were like, originally the whole conversation started out with, hey, we want to kind of like have like a multi-camera like broadcast style for our league finals for like the medal matches. And I reached out to this guy because he was like, hey, message me. So I told him what we were wanting to do, like pretty much almost like create a quality broadcast that you would see with like baseball or football or tennis, just where like you pop from multiple cameras, you have commentators talking in the background. And he's like, oh, I could do that.
Yeah, and then he
I'm like,
quotes your 10 grand afterwards.
well, not well. The thing is, pretty much the last conversation we had with him was he was very, very doable for us, very doable for us. And like pretty much we're waiting to have a follow-up conversation with him, obviously. But if we're able to get him, it's the footage that we're going to be able to put together is going to be on a whole other level. And I think being able to have that professional looking presentation of HEMA is going to be the most effective tool as far as growing the community as a whole. I mean, if you look at the Academia guys from Poland, they only have made 11 videos. But
Yeah,
those 11 videos were so well done. It got them 60,000 subscribers and over 4 million views.
that's true. Yeah. It's sad, but unfortunately it's the truth, and that's how we get more audience and more viewers. Like if you notice, like in most tournaments, most of the audience or viewers are other HEMAists. Like we need to find a way to get the general population to just want to watch us fans, want to watch us fight, and that's the hard part, man. Just trying to appeal to the general public, right?
Yeah, because anytime that you are at like anytime that we've had the two tournaments that I've run, one was at a Celtic festival, the other one was in a university like gym. And it's whenever people like walk by and see it, they stop and they watch for a good period of time. And it's just trying to have that same effect and trying to do it through YouTube, because as far as access, it gives us the greatest opportunity to reach the most amount of people. And well, apart from additional social media mediums like or platforms like Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook. And I don't know, like I feel like if we can get a couple folks who really kind of hunker down and work on how HEMA is presented, I think that it could lead to an explosion of the art.
Yeah, I agree. Like for instance, my first HEMA versus Kendo video, we slowed down majority of the hits. On the second HEMA versus Kendo video, we didn't, and half of the comments we were getting was, can you guys slow down the hits like the first video? You know what I mean? It's because they're not martial artists, or they're not, or maybe they are, but they're not like HEMA is or Kendokas. So they don't, a lot of them found it hard understanding what had happened. Slow it down for the viewers. I think we will have a better time attracting people who don't do our sport as viewers. And the more people we attract, that means the more popularity and sponsors we'll gain. Like you'll have Nike, and I mean, if we even want them in, that's another question. But
Yeah, how much do you
endorsements is huge,
how much of an
right?
influence do you want to let these folks have?
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I think, and there's another thing too, is continuous sparring, right? Like I think a lot of people like it when there's less pause during a match, right? It's more exciting for them, kind of like MMA or boxing. That's why out of all the combat sports, they have the most viewers. Is because they're less pauses, so there's more action, there's more excitement, right? So, but the problem with continuous sparring with HEMA is it's hard to judge.
Yeah, exactly. Like pretty much, like I really feel like if you're like, because I've seen a couple like down south, in like Georgia or something. There was an event, and like it was a HEMA tournament, and these dudes were fighting inside like like this like chain link cage and stuff like that. It was just, I mean, it looked a lot like kind of like they had like this whole underground fighting thing going on. It was a really beautiful, it was a really cool visual, and it was nonstop. Like they just kept going and going and going, and you had judges who were pretty much trying to count up the hits, and then pretty much whoever had the most hits was the winner. And I think you kind of like, there's a couple things I feel like you run into a couple issues. I think one, safety.
Yeah.
Safety becomes a major concern. And I also feel that
it's sort of promoting bad fencing in a sense, like if you're just trying to rack up hits, you're not defending yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Now, one of the things I think is cool, and I think I did my best to kind of create this when I made the video, was one of my first YouTube videos that went up on this channel that once I became monetized still stayed up because there wasn't any music violations or copyright stuff, was the finals of the premier longsword event at last year's Clash of the Claymores. And it was like Jay Sulis, Phil Bergstaller, both. It was just a really incredible story that we should have done a much better job talking about before to kind of like lay the stage. But Jay Sulis, the guy, one of the guys fighting in the finals, he's a former Army Ranger. He's former Green Beret. Dude has jumped out of more planes than people probably seen in the sky. And like, you know, when you do that for so long, it takes a toll on your body. And that weekend of the tournament, he could barely move. I mean, he came in on that Friday, was the first day of the event, was a Friday, and he didn't fight. His tournament wasn't until Sunday, and the entire time he's just like barely able to move, just like creeping and crawling along. And whenever it came time to compete, the dude just ran on this weird cocktail of Tylenol and rage, and ended up making it. And the thing is, like, the premier division for the Long Point League, like, there's a set criteria about who gets to fight in the premier division. Like, it's an invitational with a much more rigorous screening process. And this guy, I mean, he's in his late 30s, early 40s. He's got the salt and pepper, but pretty much he was running. He was like, he had to keep moving. If he wasn't fighting, he was still walking around, because if he stayed still, his back would start cramping up and pretty much he wouldn't be able to continue fighting. And he dealt with this the entire tournament. And the thing is, these guys had 12 fights before elims. So they had a bunch of fights, and everyone they fought was a top-tier guy or woman. We had Kiana Ritter was one of the competitors in the tournament. So he went through 12 fights, fighting through this pain. He fought all the way through elims to the finals, and he was facing up. And so he was just, I don't know how this guy did it, but he just pushed through it, and it's just really a testament to his. Like, it was like Rocky, just like you couldn't stop him, just kept going. And then you look at the other guy who he fought, Phil Bergstaller. Phil had driven up the night before from Richmond, so it was like a 4-ish, 5-ish hour drive. And he had fought in a saber tournament before the longsword tournament, and he had actually won that tournament. So he had won a gold medal in that tournament, and literally 15 minutes after that, he had won that gold medal, he was having to get ready to fight in a longsword tournament. And so, and even though like he had been pretty much fighting since 9 a.m., he still was able to get through those 12 fights from pools, fight through elims, and make it all the way to the gold medal match. So these two fighters had ran like the gauntlet that these two fighters had to go through just to get to that position was insane. And they still went out and put on a close fight. And this is the one thing where I think we tried to do, we did a half decent job whenever we went through edits, is trying to, like, the one benefit of stopping exchanges, resetting after a scoring action. When you see the score and you see how close it is, and it kind of creates that tension, you're like, oh man, he has like 10 seconds left to get a hit, and he has to hit him in the head or the chest. Like it's kind of like watching American football or CFL, where like you're watching, you're on the edge, you see like, oh my gosh, like they have 10, like they just have to hold them for like a minute, but that's Tom Brady and he's got a whole minute to work with. Like you're just kind of freaking out. And I think what would have made taking that video over the top and just made it like amazing would have been if we had set the stage for the two fighters, because in the video we just pop right in and it's like boom, this guy and then they just go. We didn't tell the story of how those two got there and what those two had to overcome to get there. And not only that, but I think if we had kind of play-by-play commentary kind of helping tell the story as the two fighters are going to kind of like lay out like, okay, there's 30 seconds left. Jay needs to do this, or Phil needs to do this if he wants to hold on. And like, I think that there's a lot of storytelling elements that we like, and of course, hindsight's 2020, obviously. But looking back, it was a great learning experience because I was able to see what I was missing to take the storytelling to the next level. And I'm really, like, kind of like the focus for this year whenever we create content that's centered around like league action is just doing a really better job at telling that story.
I think that's brilliant, actually, and it helps people get to know those fencers more, and in turn, it's easier to make fans that way, I guess, and to understand the struggles as well.
It makes athletes larger than life.
Yeah, right. And that's sort of what you like want to hear as a fan, or is that kind of story, right? Like the struggles, the hardships, and knowing fencers on a personal level makes you feel like you're more, like you know them,
Yeah.
and that way when they fight, you want them to win. So I think that's key, and just having that commentary as well is a huge upgrade for sure. I mean, Swordfish has it, and that's why they have so many views as well.
Yeah,
right?
definitely. And I mean, like Swordfish did a pretty solid job with that, and we kind of saw a taste of what it could be here whenever that Long Point South video between Jake Norwood and Lee Smith. Like
Yeah.
we kind of saw the potential of what could happen here in North America by doing that. But after that event, nothing of the kind has really been attempted since. And that's kind of like the thing that we like, pretty much like the torch, just like, they had the baton, like, the baton was there and then it was just dropped and nobody bothered to pick it up. And what I want to do is I want to grab that baton and just see how far I can take it.
Yeah, that'd be great, man. And having someone in the field who knows and can analyze and understand what's happening in the fight can definitely help. And it helps fans who don't understand. If they can explain what's happening, it definitely helps the fans. It make it easier for them to understand what's going on, right?
Yeah. And I think a big part of that is being able, and one of the things that we're going to have to do is, if we're going to be doing something like that, finding a commentary team that has that ability to tell the story at the same time explain to the viewer what is going on, like having that analyst and that color commentator. And like there are a couple folks that I know that I think would be solid for it. Like, for example, Jake Pretty, one of old guard, phenomenal guy, phenomenal instructor. You give him the chance to speak, and he'll take that soapbox and he'll just go.
Yeah.
He's someone who I think And the thing is, he's like, when he speaks, you have a habit of paying attention to what he says. He's very articulate, he's very well spoken, he's very charismatic. And he would be someone who I think would be a great choice for kind of like providing that play-by-play, that analytical, like, I mean, the guy knows KDF almost inside and out. And pairing that with someone who has personality to kind of like whenever you listen to Joe Rogan, when he's commentating for UFC, and like kind of like just like oh my god, just like kind of like makes that moment like just like something as little as
amplifies that moment. Yeah, you definitely need
even more.
Yeah, you definitely need that Joe Rogan, and you need like that old school champ, right beside you that can analyze the fight as well. I mean, that's how it is in most martial art as well, right?
Yeah,
boxing, MMA.
And it was really funny, and like, I'm been a long time watcher like the Joe Rogan podcast, and kind of like the way that he does it is kind of like what was the major influence for this podcast, like as part of the channel, being able to just have a long form conversation like this, that we're not like going through like these set bullet points. We're just having a natural conversation, and it's been a lot of fun. Like I have no idea how long we've been talking, and like I remember when we started this whole thing, you're like, yeah, I'm a little tired, I'm not sure how long I can stay up, and right now like you're just look animated as all but get out.
For sure, man. It's like midnight over here.
Yeah, it's about 10:30. So I think what we're gonna do, we're gonna just kind of wrap. We're gonna just kind of wrap things up. I have to get up in like 5 hours for a 12-hour shift at the hospital. So before we go, I just want you to look into the camera and just tell the audience what you have coming up that you're really excited about, whether it's on your channel, with your club, what you have coming up, and like what your like little what you got coming up.
Fair enough. So couple projects coming up. Please feel free to check out my channel, Phil Swift. We got HEMA versus Kendo 3 coming out with steel swords. Thank you to Martin Fabian and CG Forge for donating katana for our use. He basically just said flat out, we think you guys deserve steel swords, and I think thank you for that. And we also have saber versus kendo as well, or saber versus rapier, so destreza versus destreza, showcasing saber work. That's going to be a new project for me as well, on a how to do destreza saber video. I think you'll find the footwork very interesting. Having a lot of offline footwork in saber is sort of different. Also, I'll have a kids HEMA project going on as well. We're going to be reviewing a lot of HEMA kids gear so that it can help your club start a kids program.
That's fantastic. Phenomenal, man. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. Really appreciate it. After we hit recording, don't just like hop off yet. But Phil, thank you so much for being